So it's been a while, and today I'm going to show you how to play around every single piece of non-engine you can in Springans. I chose the Centurion build, and you can see my deck list in the previous video, although I am going to mention other options you can play in the extra deck to play around certain pieces of non-engine. Since that video though, I've changed my mind, and I think the Centurion build is the best build of the deck by far, and it's not even close. If we ranked all the builds and Revolution was like S tier, then Centurion would be SS tier. Before that though, I'm going to go into some of the ones you can't play around, and that's Shifter and Imperm. Shifter is pretty obvious since we are playing a graveyard deck, and Imperm you can't play around because Rafflesia stops only monster effects, and Imperm is a trap card. Alright, so first up is Nibiru, and this one's by far the easiest to play around. I've shown this line countless times, and all my deck lists they show how to play around Nibiru, since pretty much every single hand that contains a field spell should be able to play around it. If you start with Kit, you can't play around it unless you open Tally-Ho or you have Regulus in rotation, which kind of sucks, but if you start with Kit, you just take what you can get. There is no other way you were playing anyways. It's better than passing on nothing. So we're just going to start with gold, and we're going to discard this booty. So if the line is slightly different if you open an attachable name, but if you open a spell or trap that can't attach itself, we're just gonna use this line, and this line you send Kit, and now we can go into Sargass. So this is 2 summons, and now Sargass is gonna grab us Watch and not Tally, and now we can use Watch to send a Brothers and add a Bronga, and now Brothers can bring back this Kit, so this is summon number 3. Kit's gonna add us the High Spirits, and you can just bottom any card here, and now Kit or High Spirits here can discard this Bronga, send the Iron Dash, discard, add Kit, special the Kit, and now we can make Rafflesia on summon number 5. And the really nice thing about this is that yes, you have to play a brick in Gravedigger's Trap Hole. However, the really nice thing about it is that Kit can put it at the bottom of the deck before summon number 5, so you never have to worry about drawing it and not being able to play around Nibiru if you open away the normal combo with the field spell. So now we can go into Bronga, and that's going to add us Tally. Tally's going to then detach 2 to then special summon 2, and now we're free to play. And if you use Rafflesia, you can use Rocky to add back the Brothers for follow-up, which is really nice. And now we can just go into the normal Centurion line with Flame Banshee, and we're gonna end on like 5 disruptions. So now we just add this Trudea. We normal the Trudea, and now we can grab the Primera, and then Primera is going to be able to special summon to then grab Stand Up. Here you can also go for the counter trap if you play that, and I would strongly recommend doing so, and I'll get to that later. And now we can just go into Armor Fortress and grab the trap, and now Sargass can detach, bounce back the field spell, and we just set 1, proceed to end phase and special Sargass. But if you have IP or SP, you can go into that by linking up the Sargass and Rafflesia that you already use. I put this in my extra monster zone, but I shouldn't have. If you don't have SP, I know a lot of you probably play this deck for budget reasons. It's still fine, you can still use IP with Unicorn or Underworld Goddess, or you can just pass on Sargass. That's still a pop or a bounce, that's fine too. And this is going to be 1, 2, 3. Oh, I forgot to activate the field spell, but that's 4. It's 4 disruptions plus follow-up in the form of Brothers and Gold Gorgamba. So next up is Ash, and this one's interesting since there's many different ways to actually play around it and even play through it. So if you want to play around it, the most you can do is open gold plus Rocky, or gold plus watch, and if you open watch plus gold, they have to ash watch, otherwise you will chain block your Merrymaker and summon Rafflesia before you summon Sargass or activate Tally. However, if you discard something like Rocky or Kit or Bronga, you should be able to play through it. Or if you open Rocky specifically, I'm going to show you a line that basically beats Ash. It also beats Droll, I think, since you don't add anything on before you summon Rafflesia, so you should be able to play through Droll as well. Also beats Nib, which is nice. This is a pretty good line, except it's very low ceiling, which is why usually I don't go for it. So we're just gonna start with gold. I'm gonna discard this Rocky and summon Merrymaker. This is the only chance they get to Ash, so we're just gonna not Ash since maybe they're holding Ash for something better. And now we're gonna go Rocky, add back the brothers, and now we're just gonna normal this brothers, and we're gonna go into Rafflesia. So if they do Ash the Merrymaker here, it's very low impact and very easy to play through, so you should be able to play through it. And now we can grab Tally, and now they're gonna try to Ash it, and we have Rafflesia for it. So you detach 2, they Ash, and now we have Rafflesia. So you send and negate Ash. So now we can special summon 2. And we're actually going to do something different here. We're going to go Kit, Chainlink 1, Sargass, Chainlink 2 to target Rocky. And that we're going to bounce it, and we're going to add High Spirits and bottom any card. And what this does is it basically puts a machine in our hand for Kit, for High Spirits. And now we can get Iron Dash into the graveyard. It is redundant in terms of amount of bodies, but it does get you to Iron Dash, and that's really what's important. If you're playing Gallant Granite, you could go into Gallant Granite here. If you're playing them over IP and SP in like a more budget build, that's what I did in my deck profile last video. But since we already used our normal summon, we can't go into Banshee, so we're just gonna go into Dweller, and we can grab this Armor Fortress, grab the Trap, and we just set 1 and pass. So this is a very low ceiling hand or line, but it does play around a lot of things, including Droll, which is very important since we're going to be talking about Droll later, and this is one of the lines to beat it. So now here I'm going to show you the line that plays through Ash. You're going to want to open Kit or Bronga, and if you open Bronga, you just send Kit, and if you open Kit, you just send Bronga. And this line still ends on like 5 disruptions through Ash on Tally, which is very nice. The problem is you specifically need Kit or Bronga, and sending Kit when you open Bronga is not the worst, but it does play a bit into Bestials, which is why I usually don't like doing it. So we're just gonna go into Sargass here, and we're gonna add Tally, and now we're going to pretend like we're playing into Nib, or playing around Nib rather, and we're just gonna get Ash on the Tally. And now we can go Bronga, banish this Merrymaker, and now we're off to the races. Now we can go Watch, send this. We're gonna add a second Bronga here for follow-up, and we're gonna send a Brothers to bring back this Kit. And now we can go Kit to add High Spirits. We're gonna bottom another card, and now we can use this High Spirits to discard this Bronga, send the Iron Dash, and now we can go into Flame Banshee to go into our Centurion line. If you don't play the Centurion version, it is less disruptions since you go into Gallant Granite and add Nib, but that's still good regardless, especially through an Ash on your tally. So we're just gonna add our Trudea here. We're gonna normal this Trudea, and we're going to go into Primera, and now we're gonna special the Primera to grab the stand up. And now stand up. Now we're gonna go into the Armor Exe's Fortress, which is gonna grab us the Armor Exe's Trap. And now we can use Sargass to bounce this gold. And now we can safely activate the stand up, set this Armor Exe's, and now we can special summon Sargass during the end phase. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 disruptions through an Ash. If you use Gallant Granite, I think it's about the same. You just will have a Nibiru in hand, and you'll still have the golden hand since you can just bounce it. So now we're gonna talk about Droll and how good it is against this deck, and it's very good since it stops high spirits, since you will Droll after the tally add, or rather Sargass, since you can go Sargass, add tally, and if they Droll you there, you can chain tally if you want, but you're still not going to get any value off your level 4s, since you can't go into Banshee, you can't go into Gallant Granite, you can't go into your Armored Exe's Fortress, you can only really go into Vegito, and that's really the way to really summon anything meaningful under Droll. However, there's other options like the Rocky line that I showed you, and there's a third option which you can just activate gold, discard this Rocky, summon Merrymaker, and you just send Bronga. So you're just gonna do the standard line and then summon the Sargass, and instead of going into the Baguska after the Sargass add, since you're gonna Droll you here, you just don't chain tally, and you just set one and then pass. So this is a pop or a bounce and another pop, since we're gonna summon the Sargass from deck. It's not great, but it's still 2 disruptions, and you're gonna have a bunch of other cards in your hand, and you still have follow-up in your graveyard in the form of Bronga, which is why I really like Bronga so much. So next up is DD Crow, and this one's a lot more interesting since it shows you the importance of running 2 Bronga, and DD Crow is actually a surprisingly good hand trap against this deck. You can hit Iron Dash, you can hit Bronga out of the graveyard before you ever summon Rafflesia. You can hit the brother's target. It's very strong against this deck, which is why I'm going to tell you what you can actually do against it. So usually with Watch you would send Rocky and then add brothers, but you can actually add Bronga, and we can send this Rocky, and we're going to discard this Bronga, and we're going to send another Bronga. So this is why I usually like playing 2 Bronga, not just for follow-up, but also because you can potentially play around stuff like this. And even if you don't open Watch, you can still go discard Bronga, Merrymaker, send another Bronga, and if you have like an extra machine, I think you should still be fine. And you can play through DD Crow on Bronga, which is very devastating. So I really like this, going for this, since you can still play around Nibiru normally, you can still do other things, but it just plays around a bunch of more other hand traps like DD Crow. So the really nice thing about the Centurion build is that it doesn't really lose to Dark Ruler anymore. Like, you can side in the Centurion counter trap for going first. I wouldn't really recommend maining it, but you can play 1 Trudea, 1 Primera, 1 stand up, and then 1 of the Centurion counter trap in a side in the counter trap, and now you have like a variety of different options that you can go for. You can go for the field or the counter trap, and the counter trap gets even better because you can actually send it the equipped monster to Regulus for the counter trap, since the counter trap does not specify like a Centurion monster in the spell a trap or a continuous trap or anything like that. It just says a monster in the spell a trap zone, which is really nice synergy with this deck. And I think you can really punish board breakers against this deck, and really hand traps are the only thing that really remain consistently good against this deck. So we're gonna start with Gold Golgonda, and we're gonna discard this Branga, and we're gonna grab the Merrymaker, and we're just gonna do the standard line, and we're still gonna play around Nibiru, since like I said, every single hand should be able to play around it. So we're just gonna go into Sargass, do the standard line, and we're gonna go grab Tally. If you hard drew Tally, you can grab the Regulus, and Regulus is actually gonna make your end board here really strong, as mentioned before, since you can send whatever equipped monster is to it for the counter trap, and you don't have to get rid of your Centurions in the spell a trap zone, which is really nice because all the Centurions are level 4 extenders in the spell a trap zone, which is so insane that I'm completely amazed at how good this build actually is. So we're gonna grab the Watch, and we're going to grab Brothers, and we're gonna send the second Rocky here. And now we can use our discard outlet for the Brothers, and we're gonna send Iron Dash. We're gonna use Brothers, bring back the Rocky, and Rocky's gonna add back the Brothers for follow-up. So even if they crack our board, we still have gold plus Brothers in hand, which is really nice. If they crack our board and set up their own board, that might probably not enough, but it's something, right? So we're gonna go into Banshee, and we're gonna grab Trudea, add the Trudea, and we're gonna normal the Trudea, grab Primera into the spell trap zone, and we're gonna special summon it, and we're gonna grab the counter trap. So Troop Centurion, and now we can Xyz Armor Fortress to grab the other trap in full armored Xyz. And now we're gonna go Sargass, bounce gold, and reset 2. And now we can Iron Dash, special summon Sargass. So even if you don't play the Centurion build, if you play Gallant Granite for sure for Nibiru, and instead of negating the Dark Ruler, you still have 2 disruptions through Dark Ruler with Nibiru and this full armored Xyz, since I'm going to show you that the full armored Xyz still works through Dark Ruler even if they negate Sargass, which is super nice, since they'll go activate a card, you can detach, you know, it's negated, and now we can still rank up, and it's gonna allow us to still use this Dark Lancer effect since it was not on board for the Dark. So this next one is a bit more tricky to play around since it's super poly, and you really have to think about your board and how it's gonna look like and if you can super poly it. But the standard reason why a lot of times you will get super poly is because you will have Champion Sargass and then the main deck Captain Sargass, and that makes Garura, since they are the same type and attribute and different names. So usually what you'll do is just link into your link of choice, usually it's IP, and that way you can't get super poly. Some other times it's like if you add Regulus to this board, you can super poly Rafflesia and Regulus, since that makes Mud Dragon. Same thing with maybe Dweller and Xyz Armor Fortress, that also makes Mud Dragon. which is oftentimes why you have to think about what your board looks like. So now you can't really super poly this board. I don't think there's any targets to super poly this. I'm playing the Garura and the Mud Dragon, so you can't super poly this now, which is oftentimes the way you get super polyed is just both Sargassum. So this one's a little bit strange and different, but it's one I did for a while when Kashtira and Runic were meta and they all like played evenly, like a bunch of decks played evenly. So you didn't back then have like the luxuries of searchable Regulus with Revolution Synchron or a searchable counter trap with the Centurions. So I would play Dagda and Lancia to search Lancia, and that would stop evenly, that would stop Kashtira and like Fenrir, so they can't really break your board. They can't really like effectively extend past it since they don't have Rise Heart either. And Runic also had a tougher time breaking your board since they can't use Huggin to protect their Runic Fountain since Lancia's in effect, and they can't use their quick plays. However, if you go Lancia, if you chain Lancia to a Runic spell, like say the opponent goes Chainlink 1, Runic Tip, Chainlink 2, Lancia, it will still add, it just won't banish. It will still try to resolve as much as possible. However, they can't activate any more Runic quick play spells if they don't chain them to Lancia. So it stops them like almost completely, which is really nice, and it stops the evenly, so they had a much tougher time breaking your board. So what I do is go Gallant Granite to search, and I would chain Dagda, and here you would set the Lancia, and then Granite would grab Nibiru. So back then we didn't have Armor Exist, so this is more disruptions, but you would go Sargass, target the Lancia, return it to the hand, then you would go Exist Armor Fortress, and then grab the trap, and then end phase you grab Sargass out of the deck with Iron Dam. And this is how I stopped evenly back in the day, but I think it's still worth mentioning because it's a nice searchable floodgate for any banished deck, and it's getting just better because of the Armor Fortress, which means you can always activate Dagda at the end of your combo. And I'm sure there's also a way to play around Nibiru with this, since I didn't summon Rafflesia in summon number 5, but I just really like this line. So this next one's a strange one, but it is possible to play around AZ's Encore with like Dweller, and the reason people would ever side Encore against you is to possibly get rid of the Dweller and return it to the extra deck before it can activate, and since you can't respond to it, you can't just chain Dweller, and for the same reason you can't just negate it with the Centurion counter trap. So for a while, when Purely and Encore was much more popular, I made a meta call to play double Dweller, and I did this line like once when I knew my opponent was playing Encore and they were playing like a deck that lost 2 Dweller. So it's not like the best thing in the world, but I do like the idea that playing around Encore is kind of like there's ways around it. So another way you can actually play around it is to actually clog your board. I believe Encore has to summon that many monsters, so it has to summon 2, and keep in mind it returns the Exist monster back to the extra deck, so you need like a fully clogged board to then actually play around the Encore summoning back all the guys. So if you build your board that way, that also works, but I tried this out for a while. It did not really help me that much, but I had the extra deck space for it, so I might as well just went for a double Dweller line. It does play into Nibiru, which is not ideal, but you know, Dwellers auto win against all the decks that you would summon it against. So I would really like resolving Dweller against those decks. So the last one's gonna be Kaijus, and I see this mistake a lot of newer Springan players make because they just don't think about this. But there's this end board looks decent. It has IP to go into SP, so that's 2 disruptions. It has Sargass, which is 3, another Sargass, which has 4, and it has Reflexa, which is 5. However, there is an issue with this end board, and that's that it only has 1 Xyz monster on the field. And the issue with that is that if they clear the Xyz monster, your Sargass are both offline, which is a big problem, and why I see so many people, they pass on like decent end boards, but I still don't think it's very good because it just doesn't trade very favorably into like Kaijus or removal of the Xyz monster. And this applies to Xyz Encore too. If you only pass on 1 Xyz monster, they just target that Xyz monster, return it to the extra deck, and then you get your guys back, but both your Sargass are offline now, and they basically traded 1 for 3 disruptions, and they can break your board very easily. And that's why I think ending on 1 Xyz monster, like if your board ends on 1 Xyz monster, I think it's not exactly the best end board you can end on. So this is the deck list that I'm running for post Valiant Smashers. I'm going slightly over 40 since I have 2 extra 1 card rank 4 starters in Primera and Stand Up Centurion. It also mitigates drawing the full armored Xyz and the Gravedigger's Trap Hole, which you just don't want to draw. I can also slot in 12 non-engine. You can play whatever you want here, although I am playing Granite with the Nib, which I really like. The extra deck options are also very flexible. Typhoon and Granite and maybe Dweller are really the extra deck flex spots for like IP and SP, and that way you can play around Super Poly. And the really nice thing about it is that you can slot in maybe SP just at the SP over Granite, and that way you can still play around Super Poly without committing as much extra deck space. And I'm just really happy with this deck. I think it's better than Revolution, and honestly, I think this is the best way to play Springans going forward.